right, and good evening. Welcome everyone here to the New Life Community Center here on Candler Road. My name is Commissioner Ted Terry, your Super District 6 Commissioner. I'm joined by my fellow Super District Commissioner, Lorraine Cochran-Johnson. And we are so excited here. This is one of our final community input sessions on the SPLOST II, which stands for Special Purpose Local Option Sales Tax. And so we're going to talk tonight not only about what we've been able to accomplish with SPLOST I, but talk about the opportunities over the next 6 years with your tax money, the priorities that you want to see, the things that you want to see invested in your community, hopefully all moving DeKalb forward. And with that, I will turn it back over to Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson for additional greetings.
Hello, everyone. I'm not going to take long. We all know why we're here. Over the past 6 years, our SPLOST has generated over $636 million that has been used for critical projects in the community. Of course, DeKalb County, I want everyone to know that I sit here on this stage, I guess you'd say the pulpit, and I acknowledge that government is in the business of providing essential services. Of course, that's everything from your water, services that you receive, to sanitation services. But DeKalb is no different from your home. We have to operate within a budget. So our special purpose local option sales tax has given us the ability to provide services far and above, far beyond what we generate from providing our general services. So of course, and taxation without representation is not a good thing. So we're here to have the conversation because we want to know where you want to see those dollars concentrated. Now, often CEO Thurmond says that we have removed the training wheels from SPLOST because our prior SPLOST that was passed in 2017 by referendum with over 70%, it was necessary that 85% of it is allocated solely to infrastructure, and primarily 85, I think, percent of even that percent was to roads. And also the other 15% could be used for capital improvement projects. But now that we have removed the training wheels, we can completely allocate that money as we see fit. And we, meaning the people. So with that said, I'm going to be quiet because we have an extensive list of questions, and I'm going to start trying to pair things together to make sure we get as far down the road as we can. And Commissioner Terry, I'm going to turn it over to you, and thank each one of you for being present this evening.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. And again, I want to welcome everyone who is here in the room tonight over here right on Candler Road in South DeKalb, as well as folks who are joining us at home or online on channel 23 DCTV. So appreciations not only to the New Life AV team, but our DCTV team for allowing this to be streamed as well as brought to everyone hopefully in their living rooms right now. So hope everyone's having a great evening. So what we're going to do tonight, just as a quick agenda, we're going to do a SPLOST I overview. And then we're going to introduce our panelists here in just a second. We're going to talk about the categories and the work that was done in SPLOST I, and then we're going to talk about SPLOST II. I have a presentation from the Community Service Board. We're going to do a survey, talk about clean energy investments, park trails, and green space, and then we're going to open it up for Q&A. And we hope to get out of here by about 8 o'clock, Commissioner. And so if we are expeditious in our panelists and discussions tonight, we'll have as much time as possible for you, our residents, to give us input and ask your questions. So at this time, let me introduce our esteemed panel. To the left, we have Ms. Dolores Crowell, Special Projects Director for the CEO, working on not only SPLOST I, but also SPLOST II, who was so instrumental in helping us get the legislation passed at the Capitol earlier this year. Also, Ernest Slaughter, who is the Program Management Coordinator with Atlas. They've been managing our SPLOST I projects. And then Mr. Terry Phillips, Deputy County Attorney, is with us as well. He'll be talking about some of the the categories as well as the e-host as well, I believe. All right, and without further ado, I'll turn it over to Dolores for a SPLOST I overview.
Thank you, Commissioner Terry, and thank you to all of you for coming. We've been on this SPLOST train, I have personally, for 7 years, and had the unique opportunity to serve as the lobbyist for the county for SPLOST I way back it seems now, in 2017. And just to give you a quick overview of SPLOST I, the work that was done prior to the 2017, it was Senate Bill 156, it's seared in my brain, I'll never forget it, is that the county was able to leverage a lot of the work that had been done from constituents just like you and from our DeKalb County staff, where they had done extensive surveys and researched. And we leveraged a lot of that information that we received in 2016, and I believe that study was done by Georgia State. And a lot of the things that came out of that survey, when we went to lobby for SPLOST I, we were able to leverage and talk to the legislators in both House and Senate about what that was. Many of the people that were in the legislature in SPLOST I are no longer in the legislature. And by that I mean it was somewhat, our county was kind of bipartisan in terms of our general delegation. So we talked to the original author of the bill, Fran Millar, and talked about what could we do, what would he see as the best way to lobby for this with his colleagues on both sides of the aisle. And the first thing he said was, you need to fix the roads. And so originally, that was all that he would approve for DeKalb. Knowing that we have had decades of deferred maintenance, myself and my colleague, I don't know if he's here, Dan Baskerville, but we worked hard to try to squeeze a little something out of our first SPLOST so that we could do some of those deferred maintenance programs, also known as capital outlay. So we were able to squeeze 15% out of the SPLOST I to be allocated for public safety and capital improvements. What we did in SPLOST I was primarily focused on roads. We used a rating system that is embraced by GDOT and our own Roads and Drainage Commission, organization. And we rated the roads with the worst roads being the first to be resurfaced and repaved. That's what we focused on. The remaining of those, the remaining 15% was spent primarily on public safety, quite frankly. We were able to purchase, I don't want to quote a number, but a number of new police vehicles. We purchased 10 rapid response vehicles. And if you know anything about fire stations, mostly when we call the fire department, what you get is a fire truck comes. I'm sorry, when you call for an ambulance, many times you get a fire truck. These rapid response vehicles have allowed us not to have to dispatch a fire truck every time someone calls because perhaps their cat is in the tree or something. But the reality is that we save millions of dollars in not having to purchase fire trucks. And so I won't belabor the point on SPLOST I because we got a lot of things to cover, but I just want you to know a couple of things. One, our delegation was considerably different than the delegation we had now. So it was a bit of an uphill climb. Two, we focused in on exactly what the Georgia State survey told us, which was roads was number one, public safety was number two, and senior citizens were number three. And as it happened, when the SPLOST was approved, it fell out exactly the way that our previous surveys had indicated.
Thank you, Dolores. Appreciate that overview. All right, do we have is it a video? Is that next? Here we go. All right, CEO Thurmond has a video. Go ahead.
Citizens of DeKalb County voted in 2017 to fund the county's first ever SPLOST, a special purpose local option sales tax. The program is expected to generate more than $388 million through a 1-cent sales tax that is earmarked for capital projects and distributed among 4 categories: transportation, public safety, parks and recreation and community facilities. Let's take a closer look at how these funds are being used to improve our community.
Overall, SPLOST is expected to generate more than $600 million for DeKalb County and its cities. Of the county's share of more than $388 million SPLOST dollars, $244 million are slated to support transportation projects and improve high-priority corridors, including funding for more than $11 million to rebuild the Cedar Grove Bridge over the Norfolk Southern Railroad to help restore this vital artery. A 2.2-mile extension of the Michelle Obama Trail to move closer to connecting with the South River Multi-Use Trail and ultimately the Atlanta Beltline. Resurfacing more than 160 miles of road to date, with nearly another 100 miles under construction and 26 miles in advertisement to reach an overall goal of 300 miles throughout the entire county. Completing missing sidewalk segments throughout the county to improve access to schools, community facilities, and bus stops. SPLOST funding is also supporting traffic and safety improvements in coordination with a major water line replacement, and installing mini roundabouts at several intersections to reduce excessive speeding. SPLOST will help fund $87 million for public safety projects, including enhancements benefiting DeKalb's fire rescue and police departments. Some of those projects are the first of 5 new fire stations planned for DeKalb County, incorporating state-of-the-art health and safety features and community rooms. Also, roof replacements and alarm system upgrades throughout many of the 26 active fire stations in DeKalb. 6 new classroom buildings at the DeKalb County Fire Rescue Academy, and more than $9 million for new police cars, rapid response fire vehicles, and fire radio systems. In the capital outlay category, SPLOST has allocated $57 million for both parks and recreation and community facilities. $2.5 million of SPLOST funds, along with a $1.5 million contribution from the Atlanta Braves Foundation, have been used to support renovated baseball fields featuring artificial turf. And more than $2 million to resurface tennis and basketball courts, including 17 courts at the Mason Mill Tennis Center. $20 million SPLOST dollars have been allocated for general repairs at community facilities, including significant upgrades and repairs at the Lou Walker and Warren Street Senior Centers. More than $16 million for DeKalb County Courthouse repairs and improvements. A new roof for the historic Callenwald Fine Arts Center. And starting reconstruction of the N.H. Scott Pool.
SPLOST is making a tangible impact on the lives of DeKalb County residents. Thank you for this opportunity to showcase your pennies at work.
All right, let me introduce, thank you to DCTV and CEO Thurmond for that wonderful video and recap of our SPLOST 1. I'll turn it over to Mr. Ernest Slaughter.
Thank you, Commissioner. The Atlas team is a part of the program management consulting firm that DeKalb County selected as a part of its process to move the SPLOST program forward. And so when the program management team came on board, we came in as a part of the staff extension. It would really take the staff too much time to try to dedicate the time and energy towards trying to manage a SPLOST program, so the county hired a program management team to oversee the program. The first penny was collected in April of 2018. We have to date $357 million collected in funds from the original projected budget of $388 million. No sales tax or towards groceries or drugs applies to the SPLOST. The value of the BOC approval to date for the SPLOST program is over $300 million. We are on track to resurface more than 277 miles of roadway out of 300 miles that was originally identified as a part of this program. This program is a pay-as-you-go program. So some of the early purchases of the program consisted of more than 100 police vehicles. We had 10 rapid response fire trucks. We had new radio systems acquired as a part of the initial phase of the program. We have opened to date one new fire station, which was recently opened and built, and we are planning to open another 4 more stations. Those stations are currently in design, right-of-way acquisition, and we are getting ready to move forward with the other projects. We are getting budgets approved with the projects to move forward. We have more than $30 million spent on park improvements and $10 million spent on building repairs. Oftentimes we get the question as far as who participates, how do we get minority vendors to participate? We have to date more than 30% of the funds allocated to LSPE firms. And to date, the database in which we manage this program is called Teams. We use this program to be transparent for anyone to log into the system if they so desire. We have county staff, county representatives that sign on to the system so that we are very transparent with how the funds are being spent in the program. We manage phases of projects from design, right-of-way construction. All cost is that's associated with the program is captured there. So we're able to be very transparent with this program. The county's website has weekly updates on the projects, and you can go to the county's website, click on the button that says roads, and you can easily pull up your road to see whether or not it's on schedule to be resurfaced. These are some of the features that we have in the program, and to date, we have done our best to make sure that the county and the citizens of DeKalb County are well informed of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ernest. All right, and so next I'm going to call back up Ms. Dolores Crowell and Mr. Terry Phillips. If y'all could please go through the SPLOST II overview as well as the e-host. And just a quick time check, it's 6:57. We're about 2 minutes behind schedule, so catch up just a little bit. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, I will. So SPLOST II, oh wow, these glasses aren't helping tonight. So. Let me try here. Step 1, the DeKalb County attorney and staff perform a detailed overview of HB 431 legislation to confirm the unrestricted categories. But before I do that, I think I just want to take 1 minute to say that, remember earlier when I said that SPLOST I, many of the legislators that were in place then were not in place for SPLOST II. Some of them were not new legislators, they were not familiar with SPLOST I, how we got there, and just quite frankly, the entire delegation, considering now that we have a totally Democratic delegation, Democrats rather, and a total Republican kind of House and Senate in charge, making the decisions. So I think it's important that you understand when we went back this year, we had to do an extra heavy lift because we had to, one, convince the party that's really in charge that we had performed above and beyond what people had expected of DeKalb. One of the reasons we had those training wheels on was because, just being totally honest, there was a concern about the county being able to execute. They had tried several times to have a SPLOST and just kept fumbling on the, first and goal, if you would. And so when we came back this time, we had the kind of things that Ernest is talking about, which was a great track record. We had all of these accolades that we were getting from the community, and we had proven that we knew what we were doing, especially because we brought in a program management team and we leveraged every asset that was available to us. So once we got the bill passed, and it passed actually in both houses 2 weeks earlier than the first one. And that's step one. We took that language and we gave it to folks like Terry Phillips, not Smith, Terry Phillips, and he and Vivian Ernst is our county attorney. They went through it, decided what the language was and what could be done in the new SPLOST II. So I moved on to step two, county staff, industry professionals, and Atlas program management team that compared the needs that we have versus the wants. Always remember that some of the projects that were done on SPLOST I are still being worked on. There are still needs. Many of the potholes that were there for SPLOST I are still there. We have to get through the list. To date, we've done over 200 miles, and I think we have contracted maybe 300. So just bear that in mind. Step three, there was a comparison that needed to be made between the new unrestricted categories that we have now for SPLOST II. And just a little bit about these unrestricted categories. Terry is going to talk to you about what those categories are and what they mean, but it opens up an entire new world for DeKalb County. Just remember, we've only had one SPLOST, and look at a county like Gwinnett, for instance, that have had SPLOST since 1990. They have already recorded over $2 billion, in sales tax for SPLOST. They've done entire courthouses. So we're just getting started. Step four, the CEO, administration, and commissioners schedule regular community meetings. This being one, the CEO scheduled 5 meetings across the county, and we completed those recently. Step five, administration will analyze the results, which is the process that we're finalizing now. Wouldn't you say, Ernest? We're finalizing now, putting those categories in place, and it's based on meetings like this and the results that the professional assessments have brought us. And so in step three, the final list of categories will be incorporated into SPLOST II referendum, and you will see those when you go into the ballot. I'm dating myself. I'm going to call it a booth, and I know we don't do that anymore. But the reality is that's where you're going to make those decisions. Now, what happens before that? We'll have 2 campaigns. One will focus in on educating you, like forums like tonight, and then we'll have a real advocacy program. And as a county entity, we will not be allowed to participate in advocating for SPLOST. We will educate for you, and we'll have another team out that will be out in the communities talking and advocating for SPLOST II.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Terry Phillips, Deputy County Attorney. I'd like to describe the areas that are available. We refer to them as categories that are available for spending funds in SPLOST II. A term that you will hear as you look at the screen and see the different categories, a term you will hear is capital outlay project. I'd like to share with you the legal definition for that term because it gives context to the list as I go through it. In the Georgia Code, Section 488110, the definition is provided. It means a major, permanent, or long-lived improvements or betterments, such as land and structures, such as would be properly chargeable to a capital asset account, and as distinguished from current expenditures and ordinary maintenance expenses. Such terms shall include, but not be limited to, roads, streets, bridges, police cars, fire trucks, ambulances, garbage trucks, and other major equipment. So the categories that build on that definition include, obviously, roads, streets, bridges, sidewalks, and bike paths and lanes, public safety and airport facilities and related capital equipment, qualified repairs for existing capital outlay projects. We have to be careful in our analysis of a repair, so you'll notice that all of the repairs that are proposed for SPLOST funding will be evaluated on a case-by-case basis to make sure that we're in compliance with the law before we engage such a project. Cultural and recreational and historic facilities, courthouse, administrative buildings, civic center, correctional and detention facilities, libraries, coliseums, solid waste, and recovered material processing facilities. A very broad category is stormwater. Capital projects by the county authority operated in conjunction with one or more of our cities. Water and sewer projects, which is a very broad category. Retirement of general obligation debt. Voting capital equipment to help our election process. Transportation facilities for people or goods, including railroads and mass transit. Qualified hospital or hospital facilities. Any capital outlay project owned, operated, or administered by the state within the county, and then broad general authorization for cities and the county to fund outlay projects as I identified them earlier. The corresponding part of all of this that you will see in the ballot at the top is e-host. In 2017, DeKalb County voters approved, with 71% of the vote, an equalized homestead option sales tax. We refer to it as e-host as an acronym, and it's simply a 1-cent sales tax that is 100% dedicated to providing property tax relief to qualified homeowners in DeKalb. All property in DeKalb with an approved homestead exemption qualify for e-host. So obviously we're talking about residential property. Each qualified property owner receives a credit on their annual property tax bill based on the proceeds from e-host. In the first round, what we refer to as SPLOST I, the savings were very significant. If you look at the tax bill, you'll see a column headed e-host credit. And from 2018 through 2022, e-host saved DeKalb County homeowners over $591 million. And the projection for e-host on what we're referring to as SPLOST II moving forward, should the voters approve the referendum, it's projected to be in the range of $1 billion over the life of a 6-year SPLOST.
That's billion with a B?
Billion with a B.
Okay.
Savings to homeowners in tax relief. I hope that's helpful, Commissioner.
Thank you, Dolores, and thank you, Terry, for that overview. All right, and again, I want to welcome everyone that's joining us online. I see we've got several folks who are tuning in. If you're listening online, feel free to leave a comment. We'll try to get to your comment later in the program. And again, thanks everyone here who have joined us since we began the meeting. We're really, really excited for the opportunity to engage with y'all. Like as I said earlier, this is our last community meeting. As you know, we do have a deadline of September 8th to give the Secretary of State the ballot question. And so what we were presented on Tuesday, and the CEO came and spoke to us and laid out the categories, just like Dolores and Terry did here and Ernest did. And so what we're trying to do as your two super commissioners, Lorraine, is to get as much feedback and input and survey responses as we can before a vote is taken at the Board of Commissioners. So over the last several weeks, each of us have been sending out emails, text messages, phone calls. We've been going to community meetings and trying to receive as much input on what y'all want to see in terms of your priorities. And as Terry laid out, those were some broad categories. Of course, sometimes someone said, well, you know, what is a capital outlay project? And they kind of alluded to what it is, and sometimes it's hard to say, well, I don't know if I want that necessarily. And so what we try to do is really sum up the key categories and specifics about what many of y'all have been asking about really for years. And so first I'll do a quick District 6 report on the survey responses we've done so far. And so number one, I'm very excited that we are up to now 1,600 survey responses who have responded in person, online, as well as our telephone town hall. Super Commissioner, I was so excited. Did anyone join us at our telephone town hall last night? All right, thank you all very much. Thank you so much for picking up the phone, because you get like that robocall and you're like, who? And it's like my recorded voice, and we're saying, join us for this telephone town hall. We called 100,000 of y'all, and thankfully 25,000 of y'all picked up, and about 18,000 actually stayed on with us. So give yourselves a round of applause. And Lorraine, it was so interesting. I was at the coffee shop this afternoon, and some neighbor said, Commissioner, thanks so much for doing that telephone town hall, because no one's ever called us and invited us like that. And he just wanted to say thank you to me and to you, Lorraine, for taking the time and the energy to reach out to residents all over DeKalb County.
Yes, I want to say that I feel that we broke the code. I honestly couldn't believe the number of you guys that was on the phone. I think that is a new record for engagement. But for those of us that are here, and it's our job to represent you, if that's what it takes, you guys keep answering the phone and we will engage you in real time. All the feedback has been absolutely positive from people who said I answered the phone only to be in the middle of a meeting and I had to understand what I was hearing. And I couldn't believe it, because I've never felt that connected that easily. So thank you to Commissioner Terry. That was very exciting and really unbelievable, because when we host town halls, if we have a couple hundred people, that is a good town hall. And even this evening, we're engaging. I sit here and even online with those who are watching live. So I don't want to take any time from that, because last evening we were able to capture within the course of an hour over 18,000 responses, when previously we were only at 1,600. So thank you for that. And I'll let you carry on, Commissioner Terry, with what you've uncovered for District 6.
Yes,
Between he and I, we have half the county, so that's why we often come together, because two halves make a whole.
That's right. Thank you, Commissioner. And so, so what we want to do for this next portion of the agenda is really just report back on where the survey responses are at this point. But of course, everyone here tonight will have a survey up in a future slide, as well as anyone online, at home that might be listening. We want to continue to keep that survey open really up until about Monday, I think, so we can gather all the information, put it all together, and present it to not just our fellow commissioners, but to the CEO and the administration for consideration as we move forward. And so this slide might be a little bit hard to see, but one of the key things that we have continued to hear about is the need to invest in mental health care facilities. That really was the top response over and over again over these last few weeks. And so the reason why we actually invited Ms. Toni Dixon here this evening, we'll get to her in just a few minutes to talk about the mental health facility proposal, is because that was the top survey response. Now, the second top survey response, no surprise, paving roads. I think every single meeting and every feedback, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, folks said, I got potholes in the streets, I got a sidewalk that doesn't go anywhere, our road needs to be repaved. And so I expect that that will continue to be a major priority. Just as Dolores pointed out, we have almost paved 300 miles of roads. It's getting a little bit more expensive to pave roads than it was back in 2017. It used to be about $500,000 a mile. It's getting up closer to $1 million a mile. So just keep that in mind. Ideally, we would have been at 300 miles at this point. Just a little bit more expensive these last couple of years. But paving roads, resurfacing roads, filling potholes, that's going to continue to be a top priority. We also saw tremendous support for sidewalks and multi-use trails, animal services. I see we have a lot of our animal services advocates folks here this evening. Thank you all for being here. We appreciate your advocacy. As well as public safety, community and recreational centers, public transit, and then clean energy projects, and then also parks and green space. And really covering the gamut of all of the things, not only that we've been able to do in SPLOST 1, But now that we're in SPLOST II, opening the door for more top priority investments that will really benefit the quality of life and economic development in DeKalb County. And so, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, I believe you have a few slides as well.
Okay. The one thing that we found that has been quite consistent, and I've honestly been amazed by the response that we've gotten. The biggest request that I've had in District 7 is for, of course, the paving of our roads, and also ensuring that we are doing quality work as we engage in road resurfacing, as well as sidewalks, multi-use trails, parks, and green space. Those are the areas that we have had the greatest request. In the second tier category, mental health facilities, and I was a little surprised by that one. But of course, we invited along because DeKalb County, I want to be very clear, we are in the business of people, but we're not in the business of housing. We're not in the business of mental health. We're not in the business of homelessness, so it requires us to have partners in those categories. So our Community Service Board has been very instrumental. And as you all are requesting, because we're beginning to have the conversation now more and more about crime and what we see as we see the rise in homelessness. And what we find, let me be very clear, during the last report I looked at, DeKalb County was responsible for housing a little over 700 people. We actively house the homeless, but the individuals that you continue to see on the street, for the most part, what we find is that there is either a mental illness or some form of drug dependency. They do not desire to be bound by the confines of our programs, which requires them to remain clean. We have hours of operation. So if you're in our facilities, there are certain requirements. So I did want to bring online our partners so that they can talk with you, because we have realized that honestly our jails and our prisons are the greatest providers for those who suffer from mental illness, because a majority of them end up there because they're never given the care that they need. So there is a proposal that has been given to us that we would like to move forward. And of course, SPLOST provides that opportunity, but we're one of 7, so there's a lot of decisions here. But also in completing the slides, and then I'll pass it off or pass it back to Commissioner Terry, we'll have some order here. Green initiatives and clean energy has ranked very high in District 7 as well. And I believe I may have one more slide. Yes, community engagement. I have had a request for everything from an aquatic center to even enhancing centers for our seniors, as well as creating intergenerational centers that are more community focused, that provides a conglomerate of services for all people. And with that, Commissioner Terry, I'm going to toss it back to you because I don't want to take too long because there's more to talk.
Absolutely. Thank you, Commissioner. All right, so this is the audience participation portion of the meeting. So if you have not taken our survey yet, please pull out your phones and we'll put up the QR code. So if you're at home, you're in the audience, just use your camera, pull out the camera, zoom into that QR code, a little link should pop up. And it's just a really short survey, allows you to prioritize and rank all of the categories that we have discussed here today. And so like I said, we're going to continue to keep this survey open. Once you have that link on your phone, feel free to text it to a neighbor or a family member or post on Nextdoor, because again, as we've done the telephone town hall, getting tens of thousands of responses just on that phone call, but also through the neighborhood networks, your friends and family, your church affiliates, everyone that is a taxpayer in DeKalb County, we want to hear your ideas and your input. So this is one of the ways that we can do it. We're going to keep this survey open through, I believe, the end of Sunday, Miranda. We're going to pull everything together Monday morning so we can make sure to get that report over to the CEO and to the Board of Commissioners. Okay, all right, so I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Toni Dixon, who's representing the DeKalb Community Service Board. We appreciate her very much for being here, and she will go through a few slides about the mental health treatment facility proposal.
I'm live. Hi, guys. Thank you so much for inviting us on to share our vision for DeKalb County citizens. Just a little bit about who DeKalb Community Service Board is. We are a provider of mental health and substance use disorder and developmental disabilities services. We have 8 primary clinics and 12 residential homes throughout DeKalb County. Here's a list of all the services that we provide, including crisis services for adults, children, and for adults and children. We also are the safety net provider for anyone that does not have health insurance or little insurance. Last year, we served over 10,000 individuals. Next slide. All right, so we have a problem in DeKalb County. It's a critical public behavioral health issue facing DeKalb County right now. Next slide. We have a lack of beds available for people experiencing mental health crises and also those that need help or to detox from chronic substance use. We also have limited transitional therapeutic residential treatment programs for individuals discharged from a crisis center or detox program. There are currently no facilities in DeKalb County that provides a center or community where people can recover long-term after they leave our facilities or after they leave an emergency room or a jail. So we're trying to provide a solution for that. All right, on this slide, this is a quick graph of how we have increased in need for mental health services and substance use disorder detox services, and also the need for therapeutic beds and recovery. If you can take a look between FY20 and FY22, that's during the COVID times. We started at, if you look at the blue line, the crisis intakes at about 3,500 beds. 3,500 individuals served at our crisis unit, and that's when we were serving at 36 beds. We've now currently in this fiscal year reduced to about 20 to 25 beds, but if you look at the end for fiscal year 23, we're serving almost nearly the same amount of individuals that we served back in fiscal year 20. Now the orange line shows an increase in the need for mental health services at our crisis center from 1,700 all the way up to 2,500, which is the most that we've seen in the past 7 years. So there's a growing need of those experiencing mental health crises and also substance use disorders. All right, here, this is a picture of our current crisis center on Wynn Way. It's called DeKalb Regional Crisis Center. If you guys don't know, that is a part of DeKalb Community Service Board. We opened in 1997. We were built in 1996. Our largest bed capacity is the largest in the state of Georgia at 36 crisis beds. We have also 6 23-hour temporary observation beds. And if you look at how we serve and how many counties we serve inside our region, we account for 49% of the amount of crisis beds within the state of Georgia. So it's a large amount of beds are dedicated to our particular region for our crisis center in DeKalb County. In our crisis stabilization unit, we provide detox services, behavioral health stabilization for individuals in crisis, and also we have an emergency receiving unit for involuntary assessments. We have been open for 24 hours, 7 days a week for the last 27 years. So imagine having to close down our facility, or imagine not having a crisis center. Where do those individuals go that don't have mental health services or don't have the opportunity to detox from substance use disorders? That means that 49% of the crisis beds that are open to the state of Georgia goes away. Also, those individuals will go on to our jails, our emergency rooms, and also on the street. Here's a quick graph of our bed capacity comparison and also the need of where we need to be. Our target is for the state of Georgia, is to have at least a half bed to a whole bed available for each 1,000 of individuals in the state of Georgia. Right now in DeKalb County, we are at 0.83 beds per 1,000. Okay, next one. So here's our solution, a mental health crisis recovery community. Next one. Here is a quick picture of a rendering that we've built out for what we would like to see for DeKalb County citizens. We will have in this facility a new behavioral health crisis center with a peer support center that includes space for individuals to come and participate in AA meetings, NA meetings. Also, mental health associations like NAMI could come and do classes and also have meetings. We'll have an emergency evaluation unit, 20 temporary observation beds, 30 crisis stabilization beds, which is also a 233% increase in the number of crisis beds. We will have a transitional residential treatment facility that includes 24 beds and its on-site treatment services, which is a longer-term facility. And we will renovate and repurpose the current crisis center that we have to a 30 to 36 bed substance use detox facility, which is an increase of 100% because we currently don't have that in DeKalb County. All right, lastly, and in conclusion, our objective is to provide a recovery community that provides immediate assistance and counseling to individuals experiencing mental health crises and to work with them to create a personalized plan for recovery and ongoing support. The expected impact on DeKalb County citizens is that we will have a community of recovery-focused care to bring your loved ones and those that lack sufficient insurance coverage to answer their behavioral health needs. We will be a trusted resource for our law enforcement and emergency rooms that receive and encounter individuals experiencing mental health crises. It will be a place where people receive real solutions with lasting impact. We intend to make a brighter tomorrow for the citizens of DeKalb County. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, Tony. Let's give her a round of applause. Appreciate that presentation. So folks, what Tony has laid out, and long story short, is that the mental health care crisis system in DeKalb County is in crisis. Because what we are seeing in that chart is that we are seeing a rise in mental health crisis response need, but the capacity at the current crisis center simply cannot keep up. We know that, as Commissioner Cochran-Johnson pointed out, if the crisis center is full, the individuals that are seeking help or who might be interacting with our police system have two other options: going to the emergency room, which means Grady Hospital, that's the other crisis response beds system in Metro Atlanta, or the DeKalb County Jail. So think about that. The biggest and largest mental health facility in DeKalb County is the DeKalb County Jail. It's not the place for recovery, it's not the place for mental health crisis, but it is the place because it is all that a lot of folks have left, and it is the last resort. And the theme that you're going to hear tonight, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, what we're going to be focusing on is how SPLOST can be an investment in the future of DeKalb. We've already talked about how the investment in paving our roads, our sidewalks, our trails, our infrastructure is an investment in the future economic development of DeKalb County. Investing in the mental health care system in DeKalb County will save us money because we spend a lot of money for grading. We were talking earlier about property taxes. If you look at your property tax bill, you're going to see the hospital tax. Every one of us is paying for grading. And it's not on your bill, but it's, yes, that's right. And the other budget line item that you see every year on the DeKalb County Board of Commissioners agenda is the budget for the sheriff. And because of the strains and the issues at the jail, that budget has gone up over $20 million in the last 2 years. So we're already paying for this, but think about the investments that we can make with your one penny and how those investments can yield greater savings and greater outcomes for our people and our county. All right, and so the last investment that we're going to focus on before we get into parks, trails, and green space is clean energy investments. Next slide. And so earlier this year, I was connected with our counterparts in Athens, Clarke County, and they had actually shared with us a 2020 SPLOST proposal that they passed back then on their referendum, where they invested about $15 million in renewable energy projects. And basically what they ended up doing is they put solar panels on several libraries, fire stations, and other government buildings. I asked the fire chief as well as the mayor of Athens, Clarke County, why did y'all do that investment? Why was that important to you? And so of course, because our friends in Athens, Clarke County are very environmentally friendly, they said, well, climate change, of course. We've got to do our part to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. We have got to do more to save the planet. But they also said it's going to save us money. Because when we invest in solar energy, they said the operational cost to pay the lighting bill, the power bill, the AC bill, the heating bill for our government buildings goes down, and it goes down over the span of the life of the solar system, which is about 30 years. So already they're seeing real world savings in the magnitude of millions of dollars by investing that small amount of money way back in 2020. Now, here's the other amazing opportunity that we have before us, because earlier last year, the President Joe Biden and the Democratic House and Senate passed the Inflation Reduction Act, the IRA. Has anyone heard of the Inflation Reduction Act? Okay, that's a good start. Most Americans have no clue what the IRA is. But the Inflation Reduction Act not only was a jobs program, an infrastructure program, but it was the largest single investment in human history in addressing climate change. $37 billion has been put into the pipeline over the next 5 years, next slide, to expand, go back one, sorry, to expand clean energy investments. And the great thing, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, about this is a lot of those programs are designed for state and local governments. And so the opportunity that we have moving forward is to leverage what we call matching dollars. And I know Atlas knows a lot about that because we've done a lot of matching dollars when it's come to road projects and sidewalk projects and trail projects. But the Inflation Reduction Act has laid out billions of dollars of grant money that, simply put, we have to apply for, have a little bit of matching money. It's like about 10 to 20% is what our local matches for 70 to 80% of federal dollars. It's all your taxpayer money, right? But it's going back into helping improve our energy efficiency, solar, electric vehicles, and then ultimately help us save money over the long run. So this is a very exciting opportunity for us to take that one penny and invest it back into DeKalb County to yield amazing dividends. Commissioner?
Let me say that I support a variety of initiatives, and in all honesty, what I've found across DeKalb is that there is such a need, whether we are talking animal services to human services to roads and infrastructure, that I'm not here in any way to advocate for anything other than determining what it is you want so that we can ensure that those broad categories are what is prioritized. And thereafter, believe me, we can come back to you with a whole litany of solutions. So with that being said, I'm not sure if we will show the vote that has been placed here tonight. I do believe that this evening, because in each district, and what you find, we're all products of our environment. What may be really important to me may not be the issue that is important to you. So there was a bit of difference in District 6 and District 7 in terms of what those priorities were, but somewhere between there lies the solution, and it's just our responsibility to ensure that your voice is heard and that the projects that rank highest overall are the categories from which we work as we move forward. So with that said, Commissioner, I'm going to turn it back over to you. I'm not sure if we'll be able to show in real time what those numbers looked like from the vote.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm not sure we can pull them up, but we will send out an email after the next several days. We will update everyone on those final survey results just going into next week's Board of Commission meeting. So real quickly, we're actually right back on time, so I believe we have just a couple of things to say on parks, trails, and green space. Go to the next slide. Or maybe that's the only slide. Is there another slide? Maybe not. All right. So real quickly on parks, trails, and green space, that was a top request, Commissioner, in the survey. As Mr. Ernest Slaughter pointed out, we have done some major investments in the South River Trail, the Michelle Obama Trail, as well as connecting sidewalks to schools and other pedestrian safety. It's actually one of the top survey results that we received in our Unified Development Plan. That was the big planning, the transportation, and land use plan that we conducted last year. And we heard from thousands of DeKalb residents to say that they wanted more walkable, bikeable, transit-connected communities. And I see Mr. Rod Frierson, one of our MARTA board members here. Hey, Rod, good to see you. Let's welcome him to the room. Thank you for your service on the MARTA board. And so what the opportunity is for this next SPLOST is about connecting those gaps. Trails connecting to parks, to schools, to neighborhoods, to shopping centers, to grocery stores, to activity centers, having access to more parks and green space, and then hopefully also connecting to transit. And as many of y'all know, we just went through a big process for the Candler Road transit plan. And I think in the next month or two, MARTA will be officially adopting the new Candler Road ART, Arterial Rapid Transit route, from the Avondale station down Columbia to Memorial, Memorial over to Candler, and then from Candler all the way down to the Panthersville campus of the University of Georgia State. And so this is really exciting because this is the next phase of expanding rapid transit for South DeKalb. And so I'm really excited to know that that's moving forward, and we need to make sure that as we do our infrastructure that we're connecting the dots here. Commissioner?
And let me say, because I always work from the questions, and the number 5 question that we had dealt with DeKalb County investing in better public transit, bus rapid transit, South DeKalb lines, and more alternatives to driving. Just know that even independent of SPLOST, that is an ongoing issue, and it is something that we continue to maneuver. Now, of course, high capacity transit is something that we've had a lot of conversations about, and we have been very, there's a great deal of difference whether you talk to one of any of the 7 of us as to what direction we should move in. But the one thing that I urge us all to do is not to get bogged down in the mode of transit. Our concern at this point, because there are unprecedented federal dollars available, is to secure federal funding for transit. Currently, all federal dollars require a match. And of course, DeKalb County at this time, we do not have a dedicated funding source, so we have not been able to seek funding for the expansion of transit, high capacity transit in South DeKalb. What we did negotiate with the 15th Amendment to our agreement with MARTA was for 2 master transit hubs in South DeKalb, one being at Stonecrest and the other being here at Candler Road. So it is an ongoing conversation, and just know that it will continue to take place whether or not SPLOST is in place, because there are a lot of dollars out there and ways to fund transit. So it's not predicated alone on SPLOST. Now, one of the other questions that we have, and I'm going to go all the way back up to the top, I think we've answered what is SPLOST, but there is a question here concerning cracked potholes and streets that are infested with potholes throughout the county, but in particular the roads that are mentioned, Walker Road, Forest Path, Green Hedge Road, Green Hedge Court, are all roads that are in Stone Mountain. Now, one of the things that I want you all to understand, and you know, I'm a former professor, so sometimes I ask for a show of hands because I want to know where we are, but you all do understand that out of that $388 million, it is divided amongst our 12 different municipalities, our cities, on a pro rata distribution based upon population. So everyone understands that, right? Let's see hands to make sure you knew that. Great. Okay. Now that we've established that, all of our cities, they set their own paving schedules. Now, many of them have IGAs, intergovernmental agreements with DeKalb County for services. And if you will make us aware that there is a pothole, if you call my office, we've had the matter addressed. Now, oftentimes potholes isn't a science, it's an art, because as roads settle, as temperatures change, depending on the conditions, Sometimes it does take 1 or 2 applications as we have a settling of materials. But be thee not dismayed as we sit here in the church. We're going to work with you until we fix the pothole. I want you all to make sure, though, that you bring the conversation to us. I like Nick's door, but I don't have the ability nor the staff to check it. Don't have the conversation on Nick's door that you should be having with a district commissioner, because that's where you get the results. And if you call my office, I'm here to tell you we're going to get the problem resolved. So I did want to point that out. And to Mr. Robert Campbell, if you have mentioned streets here, I will go ahead and turn those over to roads and drainage, and I will have someone get out and visit those roads and any issues that we identify. Now also let me say to you, because their paving schedules are set by them, if it is a county road, if you will go to our website at DeKalbCountyGA.gov, you will immediately see, I believe his name is Joe Penny. Is that Joe Penny? And if you will click him, it takes you over to the SPLOST page. There looks like a little magnifying glass, and you can type any road or street in DeKalb into that system, and it will immediately tell you whether or not we're resurfacing your road. As it relates to roads, at the top of each year, DeKalb County has 22 miles of highway. We have more interstate highway than any other county, in case you didn't know. So, of course, that means we have more to repair. But nonetheless, at the top of each year, all roads, all 2,200 miles are graded. The higher the number, the higher the priority. That means it's the worse the road. So on any given year, we work directly from that list. And I have some of you that get angry because you didn't make the list this year. But believe me when I tell you, if you live in South and unincorporated DeKalb, you cannot sit there and say that you are not seeing our roads being actively resurfaced. After almost 20 years, you now see those roads being resurfaced. So bear with us, because as it relates to SPLOST, one of the things that hasn't been said here this evening is that although we are the 4th largest county in the state of Georgia, we were one of the last at the table for SPLOST. Enabling legislation for SPLOST was created in 1985. We did not go to referendum until 2017. So other jurisdictions across the state of Georgia have had money for 15, 20, or longer years to invest in their roads and infrastructure than we have. So I always like to be clear on where we are and how we get where we are. So for us, we haven't had the money to invest that we now have. And Commissioner, rather than me just keep going, because it's a whole lot here, I'm going to pass it to you and let you talk, and I'll pop in as needed.
Thank you, Commissioner. And as you can tell, we are at the final segment of our program this evening, questions from constituents. And so as we are fielding questions that came in before the event, as well as questions online, if you're online on the YouTube channel, just do a comment there and we'll try to get to you. Do we have any microphones that we can pass around to the audience? All right. So if you just raise your hand, I think we maybe had a comment over here from our red shirt friends. A comment or a question? All right, we'll just get the mic over to them, and then we'll kind of work our way around. And just go and give us your name, whereabouts in DeKalb do you live, and then with your question, comment.
My name is Andrea Seidel, and I live in Brookhaven and part-time in Decatur, because I see you guys there all the time. My question is, you know, obviously we're with the Animal Advocates Group, and thank you so much for your support, and we're so happy that Animal Services is now on the ballot for SPLOST. The next question is, because there are so many priorities, as you point out, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, how do we get the money we need? You know, how do you not get, like, dumped at the bottom of the list?
Well, let me say that one thing that I've found, and this is, you know, I have all my colloquialisms from Lower Alabama, and I was always taught that you can tell what's important by people. Just look at two things: where they put their time and their money. Now, as it relates to animal services, in my opinion, we've reached a critical state. And in all honesty, whether or not we were to give you a dime, if we passed legislation right now that changed how we process animals as it relates to evidence, we would alleviate a large part of the problem. And that doesn't take SPLOST dollars, that takes cohesion amongst 7 individuals. So I want to be very clear. Oftentimes one can start with low-hanging fruit and solve problems. Now, the request to look at the legislation has been with our attorney, and I am awaiting, as well as others, a report. Because unlike corporate America, you don't just get to walk in and say, well, I've done my research and this is what I believe, and because I'm in charge, this is what I desire to do. So again, tonight, I never want to sit in front of you and say something that I cannot, and I cannot determine the appropriation of these funds. What we are doing is identifying the broad categories. We've heard you loud and clear. We know that currently we struggle with space as it relates to housing of our animals, and that there is overcrowding. But if I had the capacity, I would immediately change the legislation as it relates to animals as evidence. That would be a great start. I understand there's probably around 280 or so animals at this point that's being held as evidence, and some of them as long as 2 years. So that may not be the answer you want, but that's the honest answer.
Yes, absolutely. And I think Commissioner Cochran-Johnson is exactly right, because as we move forward in the ballot referendum that has sort of broad categories, but also names out some specific kind of project ideas, like you mentioned, animal services is on the ballot. And so I think the expectation in my mind is if we're going to put that level of specificity on the ballot as a category, we ought to be prepared to do something about it. Number one, because in the effort of transparency, at the end of the day, y'all are all voting on this, and it's your tax money. And I imagine most of y'all probably kind of want to know what you're going to get with your money. Is that right? Raise your hand if you want to know what you're going to get for your money. And so hopefully that we've named animal services, we've named mental health facility, we've named sustainable energy projects, that the goal is that at least over the next 6 years, we will invest in those projects. Now, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson is exactly right. The animal services capacity issue is multifaceted, and we have to work with our courts, we have to work with our solicitor, our district attorney, we have to work with changing the law, the actual ordinance. That's, you're talking to 2 lawmakers right here, and so that is something that I know we're very highly focused on. But let's also remember that the current shelter, when it was built about over 10 years ago, probably really should have been bigger than it was built. There were some budget issues, and it just it got smaller than it originally intended. And DeKalb County is a growing county. We also have this dual challenge of a lot of the new housing units in the county, apartment complexes, have very severe restrictions on what kind of pets you can have. And so we were finding, and I know we've heard from all of y'all, that individuals are abandoning their pets because when they move apartment complexes or move to a house that they're renting, those landlords are saying, you can't have that pet here. And when it becomes a situation of being homeless and on the streets, or just living in whatever you can afford, people are picking just to be able to live. And it's a tragedy because they have to abandon their pets at the shelter. And we have an amazing group of volunteer networks who have been doing foster care, as well as just volunteering at the animal shelter to address the real capacity issue that we have there. So I'm committed, I know Commissioner Cochran-Johnson's committed to seeing that we tackle this from all sides. And I want to thank you all for continuing to bring this issue up. Last thing I'll mention, if you are in a city, I want to encourage y'all to reach out to your mayor and city council to encourage them to consider also investing in some of these county-wide services. Because we know the animal shelter, the community service board, the jail, some of these services, the fire stations, these are county-wide. Doesn't matter if you're a city or county resident, it is services for everyone. And the opportunity for us to invest jointly is present. But you got to let your elected officials know because we can't tell them what to do. All right, so let's go Right here. All right, go right ahead, sir.
Hey, my name is Brad McCurdy. I'm in Brookhaven, although I still feel like I'm in an unincorporated DeKalb because I'm in the little corner that was annexed. But my question pertains in general about repaving or resurfacing roads. Many times you're driving along, they've redone the road, but they do not bring the manholes back up to the street level, and there'll be a 2 or 3 inch, sometimes more, difference. You go over that, it's easy to throw your car out of alignment. They don't change the grates for drainage on the sides of the road where they should be perpendicular to the street instead of parallel. So if you're riding your bike along, you can easily go down in the street because your tire may get stuck in the grate. And this is, it's really bad. I mean, it's not just DeKalb County. I drive everywhere and I see this all over the place. And especially if you're driving at night, the lighting may be bad, whatever, you suddenly hit a pot. It's the equivalent of a huge pothole, but it's county created.
Yep,
and
absolutely.
that needs to change.
Okay, very good. Well, I appreciate that feedback. And of course, we've got our expert project manager, Ernest Slaughter, here. And so I think what we'll do is we'll investigate sort of the specs and everything, but certainly you make a really good point. We want to make sure that not only when we're resurfacing roads that we're, doing them the right way, but also that we're not going over the curb line, the manholes, basically put it back to as in the best possible condition that it can be in. And I know Ms. Turner just left actually, but she had asked me sort of a similar question. She asked about road striping. And Commissioner, we've been harping on getting a striper for the county for about 6 months now, and I think we're finally investing in it. But we got to make sure that we keep up with the road striping as well, because there's some roads that after we pave them, it takes a minute to get the striping, and then it's rainy, it's dark, and all of a sudden you're just on a black piece of asphalt, and it's hard to see the lines, and it's not safe. And so that's something that Ms. Turner, she just left, but she wanted me to make sure I mentioned.
And also let me say again, if you send me an email when there's an issue, or you call our office because I want to know the street that you're referencing, and we can get a crew out there. A lot of what we deal with, in all honesty, because I may never ride over your road, I will not know. So ironically, I walked in a parade this Saturday, and I by the time I got to the destination, I had 10 code violations. But I just happened to be there that day. So if you will let me know, we will get right on that for you, because I want things to be done decent and in order.
Absolutely. Thank you.
What you got?
Right there. Yes, sir.
Good evening. I'm Lance Hammonds. I live in District 4 and in the Waters Edge community, and I represent the Rockbridge Coalition of Neighborhoods. Many of my neighbors have asked me on this SPLOST question, how do you ensure that the funds that are collected are distributed equitably? And basically, am I going to get my fair share of the funds, or am I going to get my fair share of the projects? And I'm not sure how to answer that question, so can you help me with that?
I'm happy to say that when we talk equitable and equity, oftentimes, for years, the reason we are where we are is because we haven't always been equitable. And let me be very clear that sometimes you have to go back to move forward. So in terms of equity, we moved away from a board of commissioners that made a decision as to what roads were surfaced to a system that has a science that indicates out of 2,200 miles of highway which roads are in the worst condition, and we work from that system. Now, as it relates to roads, as far as I'm concerned, that brings it to a science, because now you're seeing roads that had not been resurfaced for over 20 years in many instances that are now being resurfaced. As it relates to goods and services and where they're located, one of the things I've found about DeKalb is it loves a study, and we will actually fund a study to study the study. So I want to be very clear, and sometimes, Commissioner Terry, I'll borrow this from you, we have paralysis by analysis. When everyone's sitting there, just like the folks that are here with the pets, understanding animals as evidence, it's pretty evident what needs to be done, and it doesn't take a study. It just takes rational people making decisions. So with that said, even as it relates to our senior centers, we just opened Elam. which is now called Central DeKalb. And that was a science that was brought about. Very proud of that facility. Has a saltwater pool that's heated, that's good for water aerobics and all those things. But again, that study was actually brought forth in 2016 by a commissioner who's no longer with us. So 2016 to 2023 is what it took. So when we talk equity and fairness, that study determined that we needed more senior and intergenerational centers in South and unincorporated DeKalb. So when we make decisions, it is as a general rule based on science. There is a reason why we are doing what we are. So let's focus on, as money comes in, being as equitable as we can, depending on what the need is, to determine where we are locating these centers, where we are providing services. So I don't think there's a solid answer. I think it's going to be case dependent on what it is we may be doing at that time as to what will define equity.
Great question. All right. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, and thank you all. I have a statement to make. I ran into a lady last year with her child riding in her shopping buggy. I saw a little eye, and I said, well, what's going on there? It was her son, who doesn't like to be around people, but he's autistic. So we began to communicate. I referred her to some places, and I said, well, you know, I took the CERT class, the Community Emergency Response Rescue class team, and I found out that children, especially boys with autism, usually go toward water, and many of them drown. So I said, well, does he swim? And she says, well, I've tried to get him in some places, but they didn't have anyone there that was able to deal with him because of his condition. So when we're looking at the Parks and Recreation, we want to really, really be concerned about the special needs for some of our children, because I did refer him, and I did finally find someone who could give her some information on how to give him something to do other than just being in the house and very limited. But swimming is very good for autistic children, so our special needs for our swimming pools that are going to be under this money, all this billions of dollars, very much needed. Climate change, you all did mention it. And right now we're looking at all these pop-up storms, and they're not going to stop. They're going to be continual for the rest of our lives, with the heat and all the other stuff in the ocean being 90 degrees. So what we're dealing with right now, and with the most recent ones, I was on my good vacation and getting phone calls about trees and limbs falling in the community. Many of our public service, I'll say our Georgia Powers, will come out if there's electrical problems, if the lines go down and you don't have any electricity. But the problem that I'm seeing in my community is that when it's not hitting the power lines, which is the top line, and the limbs may be laying on the other cables with not as much electricity in it, we never get the response from those companies, those utility companies, to come out and clean up what is a problem with them. And I didn't take any pictures, but I have a few pictures of that situation in Greater Towers. And will money be afforded or allocated for our sanitation and roads to help with the cleanups? Right now we got a lot of bushes and weeds sitting on the curbs that are right at the street, because some of the people don't have any equipment or don't have the ability or the physical strength to go out and clean up the mess behind the storms. We know it's an act of God. We do know that, but we still need some help. A lot of that stuff goes into the drains and blocks off our drainage, and then when the next rain comes, and then we got an overflow of water. You all did mention the striping of the streets. I think y'all knew what I was going to say. But it's really bad in DeKalb, and on our streets and our main thoroughways. It's really bad. I know you don't go into the neighborhoods, but just some of our main streets, they need a lot of help. I have a senior whose house was hit by the most previous storm about 12, 15 days ago, older lady, beautiful home. The tree split her house in half. She doesn't have any assistance. And I want to see if there's any way there's some allocations for monies when we have these disasters. It's a disaster that plenty of money is allocated to help out with, especially with our seniors. And those are the main things I have to say.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, and who is our next?
We have a question over here, Commissioner T.
Okay, yes.
Hi, I'm Inslee Reel. I live in District 2, lifelong resident of DeKalb County. Actually played Little League soccer right here in this site where we are right now. My question is DeKalb County also going to receive money from the federal infrastructure plan, and how will that work alongside SPLOST?
Yeah, and I know we were receiving some grants from the state and the federal on like roads and other like bridge projects. You want to mention that real quick, Ernest, specifically?
As it relates to assistance through federal funds, the county through ARC, we apply for projects. Those projects can vary anywhere from multi-use trails, sidewalks, intersection improvements, some bridge projects, road widenings when we need to. So the county is always looking at ways to leverage funding through the feds and through the state. That is a part of the program, and we have currently in the current SPLOST, we have dollars allocated to that, and that's how we go about proceeding and pursuing those dollars with the state and the federal government.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ernest. And, just to sort of build on that, one of the tremendous opportunities that was mentioned earlier in the Inflation Reduction Act is something called the Justice 40 Initiative. Has everyone heard of the Justice 40 Initiative? So a significant amount of that federal money has to be spent in communities that are underserved or have suffered historic environmental racism and environmental justice. For those Justice 40 programs, there is no match. It's 100% funded. And there's actually a map on the EPA where you can go and you can see about 13 census tracts in DeKalb County that are considered qualified Justice 40 census tracts. So when you talk about stormwater, tree canopy, other environmental sustainability issues, we actually have the ability to go out for grants and get 100% of it funded. And so I know we're working with Commissioner as well as Zach Williams, our COO, to take advantage of all of this federal money that, quite frankly, if we don't apply for, we ain't going to get it. And in some cases, DeKalb County, just because of our size, we just get automatically allocated money. And so this is really exciting because literally hundreds of thousands of dollars are already available. We just have to fill out a piece of paper and submit it, and that will be coming our way.
And it's an ongoing thing. Let me say that it is ongoing in terms of making applications, because oftentimes we will receive notice of funding in a particular area as it becomes available, and we do have full-time grant writers that take advantage of those opportunities. And Commissioner Terry, I do have to give you credit where it's due, and also the CEO, because many of you may understand that we are under a consent decree through the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, where we are literally required to expand, enlarge, and increase our water and sewer capacity flow, because we simply did not have it. It has affected everything here from economic development that oftentimes we don't have the conversation about, and it was an issue of equity and justice. And that was one of the conversations that we've not had, because it focused along the Snapfinger Creek Basin. So a lot of conversations that could be had, but just know that that is an ongoing practice to submit grant applications for funding. And I'm glad that Mr. Slaughter mentioned the ARC. Also, MARTA has been a great partner there, as well as GDOT. And we don't have much time, but there is a grid program through GDOT where they are out there and replacing infrastructure. And some of the issues that we experience with the torrential rain and, of course, the trees that come down, I'm afraid to announce that that's not going to get better, because I think it's a result of the global warming. And, of course, you get the torrential rain, the roots are loosened, the trees topple over. So storm water is an increasing issue across DeKalb County that we have to talk about, because many people always identify the county as being responsible for anything that happens. But when initial infrastructure was built in many of the communities that some of you may live in, it was adequate for drainage, but it is no longer adequate. So it has a great deal to do with the storm water that you all see in your communities. So we do have programs that are coming online to assist you with grants and funding so that you can address the issue and we can help offset those costs, because in many instances it's not a county problem, it's a personal problem.
We're going to go to Amira Sawyer with a question online, and then we're going to come right here to the front.
Okay, go right ahead. Question online.
Next question is from YouTube. Is there an existing list of collected and spent SPLOST dollars by zip code?
Ernest, you want to take that?
We do not spend dollars by zip code. The countywide has projects identified in the program. So as the CEO had shared with the program management team, this is one county. So we have projects in unincorporated DeKalb County that we deal with, and we do not look at projects and funding by zip code.
Yes, that's exactly right. Now, that being said, there is a map online, a GIS map, and so if you want to know exactly what has been done on all the categories that we mentioned earlier in SPLOST I, if you go to DeKalbCountyGA.gov, it's like a little penny icon. It sort of comes up in the little scroll thing. Click on that, and then click on the SPLOST project map. It's a GIS map. You can see all the roads in green that have been done, the red ones that are next in queue. And so you can click it by parks, by public safety, and then there's the other category. So if you want to know exactly what's been done and what's to come for SPLOST I, that is available on our website.
I don't know, can you hear me? Okay. Just to expand on something that Ernest was saying, you know, we were talking about the dollars that are allocated for SPLOST. The $388 million that Commissioner Cochran-Johnson mentioned is for unincorporated DeKalb. Then all 12 cities, they get their own slice of SPLOST, and they are able and in a position to assign where streets are paved. The reason I'm bringing that up is because sometimes when we're at community meetings and we will have people that are very concerned about a road or a street being paved, and it's not clear to them that they live in a municipality, a city that has their own SPLOST dollars and will be responsible for doing their own paving. So we got to remember that when we're looking at the way the funds are allocated.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, we'll go right here, and then I know we have a burning question right here as well.
Right here.
Yes, go right ahead.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Shelley Basin. I live in District 3. I have two questions. The first one goes back to the presentation from Tony. I wanted to know, as well as for the board, has there already been site locations identified for the proposal of the new mental health crisis recovery center? And then the second question I had was for Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, would be, have we increased or identified more partners for bringing more affordable housing to DeKalb County so that that doesn't look like a crisis 4 or 5 years from now?
Okay, so to answer your question, we haven't found a physical location yet. We have some specifications that we're looking at, though. We would like for the new crisis center to be easy to get to, so near a like 285 or near 20, and also near where all of our local law enforcement can get to as well, so close to the jail or close to the hospitals as well. So we're still in the process of completing a study for that. Say that. Possibly, we're not sure yet. We don't have an answer to it. We're studying right now. But we're not going to study to study, though. We'll have an answer soon.
And let me say, as it relates to housing, wow. In 2020, because I'm always on the computer, so I pay attention and we catalog all inquiries that come in, and I notice the abundance of requests for housing. And that's when I realized that DeKalb County had a list of over 40,000 people that were waiting for affordable housing. And that list, I'm happy to say now, is down to slightly over 20,000. However, it is an ongoing problem. Now, actually, and let me also say again to Pastor Marlon Harris and the New Life Church where we sit, thank you for allowing us to host this meeting here. But he is one of our church partners on housing. My district, District 7, we actually went out there and we began to have active conversations because DeKalb is not in the business of housing. We need housing partners. Now, in that process, there are things that we can do. Of course, depending on the amount that you're investing, we can give tax abatements. And we also can work with you because we have everything from 108 revolving loans to CDBG, Community Development Block Grant Funds. And we want to be, or should be, I will say even more than we are, a partner. And I see no problem with issuing P3s, public-private partnerships, because DeKalb is rich in land, and if you're willing to build, then hey, I have the land, let's enter a partnership because this helps us meet the needs of the people. So, there are several projects that I'm personally aware of, including a project that is spearheaded by the church that will create over 300 housing units, if I remember properly. So we are also looking at, through our partnership with MARTA, we are now repurposing our MARTA stations so that they will literally become livable centers that have housing. Because of course, transit-oriented development is real. More and more people don't want what we did, a single family home that sits in a community. If you ask or do the research or study, the bulk of young people now, they are more concerned with brownstones, townhomes, condos. They want more convenient living. So in saying that, I'm familiar with, at least at this moment off the top of my head, 5 different projects, 3 of which are being developed by our partners that are faith-based community members. And to any faith-based institutions, churches, synagogues, whatever it may be that's watching, you all offer a wealth of opportunity because in the church there is a great deal of money. So you have the ability to bring to the table what often partners do not. So what I want us to all do is become a part of the solution. It's time for us to do more ownership and have these conversations. And as your elected officials, it's our responsibility to guide you towards resources that can move along those projects. So for any developers that are watching, we're here and ready.
And that was a great question. And I want to give you a shout out, Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, because it was Lorraine's own initiative several years ago to fund the restarting of the DeKalb Land Bank. And that is so important because there are over 1,000 properties, mostly single-family properties that have been abandoned, have structures on them. The CEO has done great work at demolishing structures, but they're just sitting there vacant. And so as Commissioner Cochran-Johnson had the vision several years ago to say, we need to get this land bank up and going because that is one of our tools in the toolbox to see land put back on the market. And I'm proud to say that they've begun to do their work and acquire land and to start to do their job. But we have 1,000 vacant properties that we own that, quite frankly, we got something to do something with. And so thank you, Lorraine, for your leadership on that. And we're going to just keep pushing them to do more. So, all right. All right, last question here, or last couple questions, and we'll wrap things up.
Can you hear me? Okay, yes. Wait a minute. I'm sorry.
Here and then right here.
I've been waiting a long time. First, let me thank you, Commissioner Johnson and Commissioner Terry. Thank you so very much, right? Because we even had this opportunity to be up close with people that really, our elected officials that really understand and can give us guidance on what we need to do as citizens of this county to help the place that we live. We live here because we love it here. What I'm seeing, and I think you alluded to some of it, and the gentleman that was over here talking about the potholes, that's a communication issue with some of the leadership, department leaders at DeKalb County. Either the potholes, what he's saying, because I go through the same thing and he lives on a different part of the county. The potholes are filled with about 3 inches left. So when you ride through that pothole, it's 3 inches of space there where it didn't get filled. And I do understand about the expansion of the asphalt and things of this nature. I shouldn't have to call somebody 3, 4, 5 times to get one pothole filled. That's a communication issue. Same thing with code enforcement. The people at the top of code enforcement, I shouldn't have to call them 4 or 5 times for the same issue, and they see something different than I see. I live in that community, so I'm able to best tell somebody, just like the things with the roads that need to be paved. I'm looking at a street, Tiffany Drive. I don't live on Tiffany, but it's in my community, where the cement is about 6 inches, the potholes there are about 6 inches in the ground. Just recently, maybe 2 months ago, Splash, I'm going to say Splash, what they did was they asphalted 2 of the streets in our neighborhood. 2 of the shortest streets there that didn't have 6-inch potholes. Then we walked around and said, well, wait a minute, what about this one with swimming pool-sized potholes in it that nobody touched? A lot of this is communication issues. So either some people or representatives from the community need to speak with the heads of some of these departments, but we need accountability from these people. I'll call his name out. I called Tim Hardy 25 times and asked him the same thing. And he'll say, oh, well, this and that, and it's never done. Yes, absolutely. Or I have to keep calling them over and over again. That shouldn't happen because your time is valuable. We're paying them to do the same thing over and over again. So that means the county is wasting money. If I have to ask them 4 or 5 times to do the same service, my tax dollars are being wasted.
Yep, understood. And I'm so glad that you brought this up of communication, because there's an old saying in government, but it applies broadly: the squeaky wheel gets the grease. And so what you're looking at right here are 2 super commissioners, and we're the big squeaky wheels, okay? And we have our team over here that is hard at work working on these issues. And so what we will help you do, and anyone here, you let us know what's going on. We always encourage everyone to do the 311, call 311, text 311, email 311, get it in the system. But if you don't see any response or any movement, just email me and Lorraine. One of us represents you, and certainly your other commissioners, and just make sure we know about it. We will be happy to work on things that haven't been done for months or years, or issues that may have, a contractor didn't finish doing this or that. So we are here to support you and to advocate for you. All right, we had one question right here, and this will be our last one. Okay, two more. Okay, go ahead, go right ahead.
I've spoken, Commissioner Cochran, I've spoken to your office about this before, as well as Dr. Marita Johnson's office. I live in the Stoneleigh neighborhood, and we have no street lights. The place is as dark as 100 midnights down in a cypress swamp, as the old saying goes. So people take the opportunity to dump in the neighborhood at night. You cannot see anything. Early in the mornings, the children who catch the bus, they're out in the dark catching the bus because you can see nothing. I wondered, when I got the email, I wondered if SPLOST funds could be used on the infrastructure. That is a problem. We thought, if anything, we would end up, because we have underground wiring, we were told that we would need to pay for the poles for the lights. But when Georgia Power looked into it, we thought we'd end up paying maybe $10,000. When Georgia Power looked into it, he said, the fellow said that it ends up being over $100,000 because there is no infrastructure for street lighting in the neighborhood, has never been. So I wondered, in terms of infrastructure, could SPLOST funds be used for that? Our neighborhood has quite a few elderly and retired people, including myself, but kids and whatever else too, and it is dark, dark, dark over there.
Are you Miss Wilcox
I
Jackson?
sure am.
Okay, nice to meet you.
You too.
As I said, I keep record of everything. That being said, we communicated as early as July 25th. Now, let me say to you, as it relates to the infrastructure, and you know, we can't go back because many of the communities that have this issue are our older communities. Because as we're bringing new communities online, we have the requirement of the street lights. We have the requirement of the HOA. We have the requirement of the monumental entry. So with that being said, when it comes to revisiting infrastructure, oftentimes it can require, honestly, a special assessment for the homes that are within that community. Now, I want you to hear me carefully when I say this, because I'll never tell you what you want to hear. I'm going to tell you what I know to be the truth. DeKalb is kind of like a math problem, algebra as a matter of fact. What you do to the left, you have to do to the right. So I can't give your community the street lights if I haven't opened that access to all communities. And that's where the problem will come. Because whatever we do, we have to be equitable. It's like children, and I wish some around here would get that. You are fair with them all. So, with that being said, you know, I see the numbers that are sitting right here in front of me as it relates to the community. And would your community be willing to accept a special assessment? Now, what we could do potentially, perhaps Commissioner Terry and I, because I chair Public Works and Infrastructure, understanding the need, and I could sit here right now and write a piece of legislation or a resolution for the need to ensure public safety and the street lights as a necessity in communities. Because oftentimes, one thing we found, because a part of my video surveillance requires lighting, mandatory 75 feet, because criminals don't like to be seen. So oftentimes it does create more of a criminal element. I could write the legislation, and perhaps we as a body can come together and agree that there is a necessity and create a pot of money from which all communities would have access to offset the cost. Because I do believe, based upon what I see in your community, it's going to require a special assessment of those homes. I'm not sure how many are there, but when you're looking at over $100,000, you do the math. And oftentimes we assess that as a part of the billing. So there are ways that we can make this happen for you. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you we're going to give you those street lights. We've got to work through it. Okay?
Got one here, and then one there, and we're done. Okay, here we go.
Hey, good evening. Thank y'all again for being out. I have two questions. First of all, my community, I live off Pleasant Forest Drive over here in Decatur, off behind Wesley Chapel. And about a year ago, we put in a request for speed bumps because we have a problem with speeding. The request got through. It was approved. We was waiting. Never heard anything. One of our fellows in the community followed up, and they was told that, oh, we have to do the survey again. Yeah, we approved it, but we're going to have to do it again, and we'll figure out when we're going to do it. So first of all, is SPLOST part of making sure we can get those speed bumps in? And how do we go about addressing getting this done after it's already been approved and now they actually have to get it approved again? Second question is concerning MARTA. I know DeKalb County puts in about $400 some odd million towards MARTA every year in taxes. We've been promised that expansion on MARTA, especially rail, for years. What is DeKalb County doing as far as to get more of that money access to go towards the rail system, getting over here, especially on this end of 20, and to get MARTA included in the GODT to get some of that state money in order to help fund MARTA. Because DeKalb County and Fulton County split up the bill, but it seems like DeKalb County gets the less service, especially on my end of town. So those are my 2 questions.
First thing, what community did you say as it relates to the speed tables?
I stay off of Pleasant Forest Drive in Decatur.
Pleasant Forest Drive.
Pleasant Forest.
Pleasant Forest.
Yes, right behind JJ's on West Chapel.
Okay, because I'm going to localize your problem as
right.
it relates to those speed tables. Now, let me say to you that it's a process. Did you all receive the amount of required signatures?
Yes. Yes, and it was approved.
Okay. So in that event, what you're saying to me, and again, what you're saying, I got to figure that out because it don't sound right.
Right, because like I said, my neighbor, he followed back up again, and they're telling, oh, we got to do the survey again to get approved again when it's already been approved.
Now, one question, did this begin prior to the pandemic? Was there a multiple year wait?
It's been about 1.25 years now.
Okay, so, and we'll get your name.
Right.
JP will get all your information, and I want to do research on this because when you say something to me, I'm a methodical person, and it doesn't line up with what I think to be the practice, then I got to figure this out.
All right.
And find out exactly what happened. So I don't care to speak on that because I don't know, and I don't see the communications here in my system from what you mentioned.
So we'll have to have a whole nother town hall on transit because that would be way too much time to talk about tonight. But you're talking to the 2 PWI commissioners right here. That is our bailiwick. And so we are very interested in advancing the conversation on transit. It is an incredibly important part, not only about economic development, the environment, but also equity. And we know that South DeKalb has not received the transit investments that it needs. And I know when just talking about the Candler Road AR, you can applaud for that. Y'all know it. And I want to appreciate Commissioner Cochran-Johnson for, before I got here, in really pushing MARTA, no offense, Rod, to invest in South DeKalb with the transit hubs as well as the Candler Road ART, which are things that are happening right now. And so we're making progress, but we have an opportunity to do a lot more.
And let me say, because I always like to be very transparent, I didn't have to push MARTA. I'm the only commissioner out of the 7 that voted against the ratification of the 15th Amendment. And it wasn't anything personal. It was just that we have a 40-year document, and I didn't feel we should be amending it for a 15th time. It's time to go back to the table and renegotiate. It takes our lawyers, and you know it's the truth, it literally takes weeks for them to walk through the document as it relates to all the amendments. And I just didn't think that made good sense. But with that being said, MARTA has been good partners to us. I accept on my shoulders, as a member of the 7 of the governing authority of DeKalb County, full responsibility. There's no reason but for the fact we cannot come together as a unit and make logical decisions because the ARC, the Atlanta Regional Commission, stands ready to take action. MARTA stands ready to take action, as well as GDOT if there is a necessity for right-of-ways that may be needed. So that's a decision that we have to make, and we have to be logical in making it. And we just honestly have not gotten there yet. But I welcome the opportunity to have the conversation because it ought not be that difficult to move what we know is necessity forward. I can remember in 2019 when I joined the Board of Commissioners, every year the governor has his breakfast with the Chamber of Commerce, and he warned us then of growth and transportation. So the longer we sit, we place ourselves in a point of detriment.
So we have a last question here in the back. I will be present in the back by the doors to take your questions if they weren't answered tonight, and we will ensure they get addressed.
Thank you very much. My name is Kenneth Royal. I'm actually in Lorraine Cochran-Johnson's district, so I really appreciate you having this event tonight. One of my biggest questions is, I understand that the Division of Roads and Sewage is quite understaffed. And so with all of the monies that is coming in or expected to come in through the SPLOST II, what is the plan to get those divisions brought up to speed so that they can continue doing the regular work orders that comes throughout the county? Thank you.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks, Kenneth. And so one of the things that y'all may have saw that we voted on earlier this year is we updated our stormwater fees. That's the funds that goes to public works and roads and drainage that is directly addressing the thousands of detention ponds, Lorraine, as well as the 25,000 detention ponds, as well as the catch basins, the street gutters. And so, you know, the fees hadn't been adjusted in 20 years. And so working with the administration as well as the Board of Commissioners, we passed the fee increase that is now giving us an additional $25 million into the Stormwater Utility Fund. And I'm proud to say that we've already voted on about $8 million in contracts just to catch up on the maintenance backlog. And just like we mentioned earlier with the roads and the paving, we got about a almost 5-year backlog in just maintenance of these stormwater facilities. And a week doesn't go by, Commissioner, where a neighbor is emailing about flooding in their neighborhood, on their streets, in their backyards, in their basements, because the stormwater systems, one, are under capacity, and these storm events, as Jocelyn mentioned, are getting worse and worse. So more rain is being dumped in an hour than it sometimes in an entire week or a month. And people's backyards are filling up, the roads are becoming rivers, and so this investment that we've made right now in the Stormwater Utility Fund is so important. And then, of course, SPLOST II, as we mentioned earlier in the categories on the ballot, does mention stormwater. And so that is on the table. One of the things that we didn't mention tonight that I'll just mention that we have taken, just with SPLOST I, the SPLOST II is really kind of considered a pay-as-you-go. And so there's some things that you can bond out and sort of do projects ahead of time. But a lot of these SPLOST I projects were pay-as-you-go. Didn't want to commit ourselves not knowing how the economy was going to go, the revenue projections. Right now, we're looking pretty good with those revenue projections. As Dolores and Ernest and Terry all pointed out, we feel really bullish about the e-host, hopefully raising $1 billion for taxpayer relief, and that we hope that the SPLOST will, it won't be $1 billion, but it'll be a lot more than it was in SPLOST I over the next 6 years, if the economy and just 2 to 5% growth patterns continue as they have the last few years. So, great question, Kenneth. All right, so I want to let's give our panelists a round of applause. Thank you, Mr. Ernest Slaughter, Dolores Clodwell, Terry Phillips, and Tony Dixon. And a special thanks to the Super District 6 and Super District 7 staff and team, Miranda
Best staff in
and
DeKalb
JP
County.
and Amaris and Leah. We appreciate y'all very. Thank y'all so much for being here and taking your time and energy to give input on this important program. And a special thanks to Commissioner Lorraine Cochran-Johnson for always being willing to work together. And it's something that we often say to each other, and it's an old saying, it's amazing what we can accomplish when we don't care who gets credit for it. And we are one DeKalb, and if we work together, stay united, we can accomplish so much more as we have in the past. So Commissioner Cochran-Johnson, thank you for always being a servant leader, not a politician, but a servant leader for the people of DeKalb County.
Well, Ted's been awfully kind to me tonight. I am not here for anything other than for you guys. I sort of fell in love with DeKalb, and you got me. And with that said, again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to my team, because it does take a village, and we are a community. And again, make sure you tell all your neighbors, stay off, what's that thing called? Nextdoor, and just send us the emails, because that will help us improve our reputation. All we need is the knowledge, and we're here to work on your behalf. So y'all go home, enjoy your families, and have a good evening and night, what's left of it.